She found the playlist by accident, 47 songs, on her husband's phone, a playlist titled Cass, Summer. She recognized 3 of them. They were songs he told her he hated. She was 7 months pregnant, standing in bare feet at the kitchen island, one hand on her back, one hand on a glass of water she hadn't drunk yet. She picked up the phone because she thought it was hers. It wasn't. And in the next 11 minutes, she read 14 months of texts, 14 months of tender messages, nicknames, inside jokes, dinner reservations at restaurants she had suggested, and he had said he was too tired to try. And then, the most recent message. You only turn 30 once. You deserve the world. He had written that to another woman, while his pregnant wife was at home. And then she found out something else. Something that would change everything. Something Derek never knew. Something that meant the lavish rooftop party he was planning, the 50 guests, the Krug champagne, the $18,000 flowers, was happening in a building that her family partially owned. She didn't cancel the reservation. She got dressed, and she showed up. This is the story of a woman who spent years making herself small, and one night that changed everything. What you'll take away from this story: sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one holding all the cards. This story is about self-worth, quiet strength, and the moment a woman stops living in the margins of her own life. Whatever you are carrying right now, this story will remind you that you are more than anyone's limited vision of you. If this story speaks to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave a comment below telling us, have you ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better? We read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now. A new story drops every week, and you do not want to miss what's coming next.
The music started it. Not an argument, not a suspicious text, not a lipstick stain on a collar, or a receipt from a restaurant she'd never been to. It was a Spotify playlist drifting from a phone left face up on the kitchen island. The playlist was titled Cass, Summer. There were 47 songs. Margot recognized 3 of them. They were songs Derek had told her he hated. It was a Tuesday morning in late August. Margot was 7 months pregnant. She stood at the kitchen island in bare feet, one hand pressed to the small of her back, the other holding a glass of water she hadn't drunk yet. The morning light came through the window above the sink at that particular golden angle that used to make her feel hopeful. Today it just made everything look overexposed, washed out, too bright for what was underneath. She picked up the phone because she thought she was picking up her own. She wasn't. The screen was already unlocked. Derek never bothered with passcodes around her. She used to take that as a sign of trust. Now she understood it was simply confidence. The quiet confidence of a man who never imagined his wife would look. The notification she saw wasn't the playlist. It was a text thread. The preview showed 4 words before the screen timed out. Can't wait. Saturday. Margot set the phone down. She picked up her glass of water. She drank the whole thing without stopping. Then she picked Derek's phone back up. 3 times. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock. One more time. Margot, don't. Margot, you have to. She opened the thread. The contact name said C, work. The exchange went back 14 months. She knew this because she scrolled and scrolled and scrolled. She stood at that kitchen island for 11 minutes and read what amounted to a second marriage. Her husband had been conducting it in parallel with their own. The texts were not graphic. That was almost worse. They were tender. There were nicknames, inside jokes, photographs of meals at restaurants Margot had suggested, and Derek had said he was too tired to try. She read without breathing. She read without moving. Then, near the top of the thread, the most recent exchange. Derek. The Rosewood rooftop is confirmed. Private buyout. Saturday, 50 guests. They're doing the Krug and the full tasting menu. See, you're insane. You didn't have to do all this. Derek, you only turned 30 once. You deserve the world. Margot looked down at her stomach. She thought, I am 7 months pregnant with your child, and you are throwing a rooftop party for another woman. She didn't cry. She would cry later. Right now her brain did something she would describe to Patrice the next day as going very quiet and very fast at the same time, like a computer running too many calculations at once, like something trying to process data it was not built to hold. She screenshotted nothing. She read nothing twice. She set the phone back exactly where she found it, face up. Same angle. Same distance from the edge of the island. Then she walked to the refrigerator and took out the yogurt she had been going to have for breakfast. She peeled back the foil. She ate, standing at the counter with a spoon. She stared out the window at the yard. The yard Derek had hired a landscaper for. The yard she had paid for. That last thought surprised her. She didn't usually let herself think about money in the context of their life together. Her money. The money she came from. She had been raised not to. Her father, Theo, had very specific ideas about what it meant to carry wealth quietly. The loudest thing in a room, he used to say, should always be your character. Her character, right now, was standing in bare feet eating strawberry yogurt and deciding whether her marriage was over. She didn't text anyone. She didn't call anyone. She finished the yogurt. She washed the spoon and put it in the drying rack. Because that is what you do when your life is coming apart. You wash the spoon. You put it in the rack. You breathe. By the time Derek came downstairs at 7:45, dressed for his office, tie already knotted, she had made coffee and was sitting at the table with her laptop open and her reading glasses on. She looked up at him. There's coffee, she said. He poured a cup. He did not mention Saturday. He kissed her on the top of her head. The way you kiss someone you've stopped seeing as a person, affectionate and absent at the same time. Then he left. Margot closed her laptop. She sat very still for a long moment. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a garbage truck on the street outside. She listened to those sounds. She let them be ordinary. Then she took out her own phone and dialed a number she knew by heart. It rang twice. A man's voice said, Margot, it's early. Russell, she said, I need you to pull the prenuptial asset schedule. And I need the full picture on the Ellison Trust disbursement calendar. A pause followed. Should I ask why? He said. Not yet, she said. But soon? She hung up. She pressed her hand flat against her stomach. The baby was already awake, already moving, already doing that thing Margot had started thinking of as knocking, as if her daughter already knew to announce herself, as if she was already practicing. I've got you, Margot said quietly, not out loud, just in her chest, where the words lived before they became sound. Whatever happens, I've got you. The morning light came through the window. It still looked overexposed, but something had shifted in the room, something that felt, improbably, like the beginning of something rather than the end. She couldn't have explained it. She just felt it. The particular stillness of a woman who has found the ground beneath her feet and realized it was always there. She had not told Derek the truth about who she was when they married. She'd had reasons, good ones, she thought. But standing in that kitchen, with a clean spoon in the drying rack and a secret the size of a continent in her chest, she began to understand something. The secret she had kept to protect herself was about to become the thing that saved her. Patrice Davenport had known Margot Ellison since they were sophomores at Whitmore College. That was 11 years ago. In those 11 years, Patrice had cataloged two things about her best friend with absolute certainty. One, Margot never cried in front of people. Two, when Margot called at 8:15 on a Tuesday morning and said, "Can I come over?" something had gone catastrophically wrong. Patrice had the coffee ready by the time Margot's car pulled into the driveway. Not her regular coffee, the good stuff, the French press she kept in the back of the cabinet and only broke out for emergencies. Real emergencies. The kind that required sitting down. Margot came in through the side door. She was wearing the same clothes she had slept in. Her hair was pulled back with a pencil. She was 7 months pregnant, and she walked like someone who had made a decision and was still carrying the weight of it. She sat across from Patrice at the kitchen table. She told her about the phone, about the playlist, about the texts, about the party. Patrice listened with the particular quality of silence that meant she was physically restraining herself from speaking. Her jaw was tight. Her coffee cup was untouched. She was doing the thing she did when something required absolute attention and absolute control at the same time. When Margot finished, Patrice said, "Okay, okay, how are you?" "I'm fine," Margot said. "You're not fine." "No," Margot agreed, "but I'm functional, which is what matters right now." She wanted to say, "I knew," not specifically, not like this. But somewhere underneath everything, I knew something was wrong. I kept telling myself it was pregnancy hormones, or stress, or the fact that Derek has always run hot and cold, and I married him anyway. I knew. I just didn't want to be the kind of woman who knew. What Patrice knew about Margot's money was some of it, enough to understand that Margot had grown up differently. There was a family estate in Connecticut. Margot's father, Theo Ellison, had been, in the language Patrice used when she was trying to be delicate, serious old money. Margot drove a modest car. She wore regular clothes. She worked as an art acquisitions consultant, not because she had to, but because she genuinely loved it. That was its own kind of wealth, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. What Patrice did not know was the scope of it, the full picture. The reason Russell Hart, who held 3 law degrees and managed a portfolio that touched 6 continents, answered Margot's calls before 8 in the morning. What Margot did not say, sitting there at Patrice's kitchen table, was that Ellison Holdings was valued at approximately $2.3 billion. That Margot's trust, established by her father before he died 4 years ago, controlled 41% of that. That, the prenuptial agreement she and Derek signed before their wedding, which he reviewed for exactly 40 minutes with a lawyer he found on a referral website, contained language he clearly had not read carefully enough. She did not say any of this because Vivian Ellison had raised her daughter with one guiding principle about money. You never use it as a weapon unless someone forces your hand. Derek had officially forced her hand. Patrice asked, gently, how long she thought it had been going on. The texts go back 14 months, Margot said. 14 months. She ran the math without meaning to. 14 months ago, she and Derek had just returned from their second anniversary trip to Portugal. She'd had a slight sunburn on her shoulders. He had bought her a blue tile from a market in Lisbon. She'd hung it in the hallway. That tile was still in the hallway. Margot, Patrice said carefully, when did you find out you were pregnant? 13 months ago. Patrice's face did something complicated and controlled. So he was already... Yes, Margot said. When you told him about the baby, he was already seeing her. He held me when I cried because I was scared. He said we'd figure it out together. He said he was the luckiest man he knew. He was already seeing her. The silence in Patrice's kitchen had weight to it. The refrigerator hummed. A bird outside hit a window and flew away. The ordinary sounds of an ordinary Tuesday morning that was not ordinary at all. Then Patrice said, "Honey, I've been biting my tongue for years." Margot looked up. There were things, little things. I kept telling myself I was wrong, that I was projecting, that Derek just had that kind of— Patrice searched for the word. That kind of energy. What things? Margot asked. The way he talked about your work, like it was a hobby you had because you were bored. The way he talked over you at dinner parties. The comments about the house, the car. The way he always seemed vaguely surprised when you knew something he didn't. He thought I was being modest, Margot said. No, Patrice said quietly. He thought you were less than you are. There's a difference. That landed differently than Margot expected. She sat with it for a moment, turned it over. He never thought I was hiding anything. He just thought there was nothing there to find. They sat with that. Then Patrice asked the question Margot had been waiting for. What are you going to do? Margot was quiet for a long moment. She looked at her coffee cup. She looked at her hands. She looked at Patrice. I'm going to go to the party, she said. Patrice stared at her. Saturday, Margot said. The Rosewood rooftop. 50 guests. Krug champagne. Full tasting menu. For a woman named Cassandra who is turning 30. Margot. He doesn't know that I know, Margot said. And I would like to keep it that way. For exactly one more week. Why? Margot picked up her coffee cup. It had gone cold. She drank it anyway. Because there are some conversations, she said, that should happen in public. She asked Patrice one more thing before she left. She asked it at the door with her hand on the frame and the August heat coming in from outside. Can I borrow that black dress? The one with the empire waist? Patrice looked at her for a moment. The Givenchy. Yes. Margot, that dress cost— I know what it cost, Margot said. I'm the one who told you to buy it. The drive home from Patrice's house took 22 minutes. Margot spent all of them doing what she had spent years training herself not to do. She remembered. Specifically, she remembered the first time she introduced Derek to her mother. Vivian Ellison had received them at the Connecticut house, not the main house, the garden house, which is what Vivian called the 11-room cottage at the back of the property. Vivian had served tea. She had been perfectly pleasant. She had walked Derek through the rose garden and asked him polite questions about his work and his family and his intentions. Afterward, when Derek was in the bathroom, Vivian had turned to Margot and said simply, "He doesn't know, does he?" It was not a question. "No," Margot said. "When are you going to tell him?" "When I know he loves me for me." Vivian had looked at her daughter for a long time. The particular look she had, the one that saw everything and judged only half of it. "That's not wisdom, Margot," she said finally. "That's fear. You know the difference." "Yes," Margot said. "I do." She had meant to tell him. She had a whole plan. After the first year, after they had built something real, after she was certain. But the first year became the second year, and the second year became a wedding, and the wedding had a prenuptial agreement that Russell drafted so carefully that Margot barely had to think about it. By then the secret had become simply the architecture of her life. The load-bearing wall she couldn't remove without the whole structure shifting. She had never lied to Derek about who she was. She had simply never told him the full truth. Was that wrong? I've been asking that question for 3 years, and I've never come up with a clean answer. The people I've met who knew about the money before they knew me, something was always different. The way they looked at me, like I was a destination, like I was a solution to a problem they were already solving. Derek looked at me like I was a person, a normal, sometimes difficult, often stubborn person. I needed that. I needed to be someone's person before I was someone's opportunity. But now I'm wondering if what I actually did was create a man who thought he married down, who thought he was the provider, who thought his wife was dependent, who thought... She stopped herself. She was sitting in her car in the driveway of the house they shared. She had been sitting there for 6 minutes. The garage door was still open. She could see the dusty corner where Derek kept his golf clubs and the shelf of half-used paint cans from the renovation 2 years ago. She had paid for that renovation. He had chosen the finishes. It had seemed like a fair division at the time. She went inside. Derek would not be home until 7. She had hours. She went to the room she used as a home office, the room Derek called her art room, the way you'd say a child had a playroom, with that particular quality of affection that was actually condescension. She sat at her desk. She opened her laptop. She called Russell. This time, video. Russell Hart appeared on her screen in his office on the 38th floor of a building in Midtown Manhattan. The office looked like what would happen if a library and a law firm had a tasteful argument and neither side won. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a mahogany desk that had belonged to his mentor, 2 chairs that had never in Margot's memory been occupied by anyone other than Russell himself. He was 62 years old, but looked 55. He had been the Ellison family's chief legal officer for 23 years. He had known Theo before Margot did. That was how he sometimes talked to her, like he was watching her father in miniature and finding the resemblance both comforting and alarming. "Tell me what happened," he said. She told him. He listened. Russell Hart had the emotional temperature of fine marble. He did not react visibly, but when she finished, he said, "How far along are you now?" 31 weeks. And the prenup? "I need to know exactly what he's entitled to," Margot said. "In the event of..." "I know what event," Russell said. He turned to a file on his desk. Based on its thickness, she suspected he had been keeping it updated regardless. "The short answer," he said, "is very little. Your father was extremely thorough. The trust is structured as a separate property asset. Your premarital holdings are completely protected. The marital estate, what you've built together, is subject to equitable distribution. But given the disproportion in contribution..." "What is the marital estate?" Margot asked. "The house, primarily. Some joint accounts Derek contributed to, and you matched for appearances. A vehicle, some furniture." "The house. What's it worth now?" "About $1.2 million. You put in the down payment and the bulk of the renovation costs from a discretionary account." "So," Margot said. "So," Russell said. "In a worst-case scenario, where a court was determined to be generous to Derek, he might walk away with $200,000 to $300,000 and a car." Margot looked at the wall of her art room. On it hung a small Diebenkorn. Her father had bought it in 1987. He had paid $40,000 for it. Its current value was something Russell reminded her of periodically, and that she tried not to think about. "And if he knew about the trust?" she asked. "He doesn't," Russell said simply. "But if..." "Margot?" Russell looked at her directly. His voice was quiet and absolute. He signed a prenuptial agreement that he did not read carefully. He has no claim on the Ellison Trust. He has no claim on the holdings. He has no claim on your inheritance. The only thing he has a claim on is whatever you have voluntarily shared with him. And based on how you have structured things, that is remarkably little." She nodded. "Now," Russell said, "what would you like to do?" "I need 1 week," she said. "4? "For the party," she said. "I want to go to the party." Russell stared at her. "Russell," she said. "He threw a rooftop party for his mistress while his pregnant wife is at home. I am not going to let that happen quietly. A long silence followed, the kind Russell used when he was calculating outcomes rather than processing emotions. Should I be worried? He asked. No, she said. I'm not going to do anything dramatic. I just... She paused. She looked at the Diebenkorn. I want him to see me. Really see me. One time, before it's over. I want him to understand what he had. Russell considered this. Should I arrange anything? He asked. Yes, she said. I want a file. Everything public-facing about Ellison Holdings. Press releases. The Forbes piece from 2 years ago. The board announcement after Dad died. Everything. Why? Because he's going to Google me, Margot said quietly. And I want there to be something to find. Then Russell said something in his characteristic understatement, the kind of understatement that contained earthquakes. Margot, he said, are you aware that the venue for Saturday's party, the Rosewood Rooftop, is owned by a hospitality group that the Ellison Trust has a 43% stake in? She was very still. In practical terms, he continued, Derek has rented a party space in a building that your family partially owns. You could technically cancel the reservation. Margot was quiet for a long moment. I don't want to cancel it, she said. No, Russell said. He almost smiled. I didn't think you would. I want to attend it, she said. She spent the rest of that afternoon in her art room, not working. She made a list. Not of grievances, of logistics. She was, as her father used to say, building the board before making the first move. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Margot performed her marriage like a concert pianist sight-reading a difficult score, technically flawless, emotionally absent. She made dinner on Wednesday, pasta with a sauce that took 40 minutes and filled the kitchen with the smell of garlic and fresh basil. Derek came home at 7:30 and ate 2 servings and said it was great, and asked about her day with the quality of attention that meant he was physically present and mentally elsewhere. She asked about his work on Thursday. She asked specific questions, questions that required specific answers. She watched him answer them and felt, for the first time, the particular exhaustion of a person who has been performing ease for so long they've forgotten what genuine ease felt like. On Friday morning, she went to her 31-week prenatal appointment. Dr. Caroline Merritt was a calm, precise woman who had the rare quality of making medical information feel like a conversation rather than a report. She pressed the cold ultrasound transducer to Margot's stomach and watched the screen and said, "Everything looks perfect." The baby was measuring exactly right. Heart rate was strong. Position was good. Margot lay on the examination table and watched her daughter's heartbeat on the monitor and felt something in her chest that was not grief and not hope, but some third thing that didn't have a name yet. She drove home. She told Derek what Dr. Caroline Merritt had said. She told him the baby was measuring perfectly and her heart rate was strong and everything looked good. He said, "Great, great." He was scrolling something on his phone. She watched his face while he said it. He has never once asked about her name. We agreed on it 2 months ago. He hasn't mentioned it since the day we decided. Eleanor Vivian Reeve. He helped choose it, and then he set it down and moved on, like it was a task completed rather than a person arriving. She stopped herself. Spiraling was for afterward. Right now she had things to do. On Thursday night, Derek went out. Work drinks, he said. He was home by 11. He smelled like expensive whiskey and a restaurant she didn't recognize. She was already in bed with her book when he came in. She pretended to be asleep. The pretending was easy. It had become easy months ago without her noticing. After she heard his breathing slow and deepen beside her, she lay in the dark and made herself feel the full weight of what she was carrying. Not the anger, not yet. That would come. She could feel it building somewhere behind her sternum, like a weather system gathering pressure. But tonight she let herself feel the grief first. The specific grief for the marriage she had believed in. The version of Derek she had loved. The years of small adjustments she had made, making herself quieter, smaller, less, because she thought that was what love required. It had not been love. It had been management. On Thursday night, after Derek had come home and gone to sleep, Margot got out of bed. She went downstairs. She could not explain what happened next, except that she was suddenly incapable of stillness. The house was quiet, and she was not. She cleaned. She cleaned the entire main floor with the specific, manic energy of a woman who cannot control the large things, and so is controlling the small ones. She wiped down counters. She reorganized the pantry. She got down on her hands and knees, 7 months pregnant, on her hands and knees, with a toothbrush and cleaned the grout lines in the kitchen tile at 11 o'clock at night. It was unreasonable. She knew this. She could not stop. When she had finally run out of surfaces, she ran a bath. Not for any particular reason. She filled the tub because the cleaning had used up everything, and now she had nothing left. She didn't even change into a robe. She sat on the edge of the bathtub in her jeans and her old college sweatshirt and put her feet in the warm water and sat there. The bathroom tiles were pale green. She had picked them. She had driven 40 minutes to a specialty tile shop in Hoboken and spent 2 hours picking them because she had a very specific idea of what she wanted. They were exactly the color she had envisioned, and she had loved them every single day since they were installed. She thought, I am going to miss these tiles. That was the thing that made her finally cry. Not the party, not the 14 months of texts, not the playlist with 47 songs, not the image of Derek's hand on the small of another woman's back. Those things would have their moment. They would get their due. But the tiles, the pale green tiles she had chosen with such care for a bathroom in a house she had built with a person she had believed in. She cried for the tiles. She cried for everything the tiles represented. She cried quietly and efficiently, the way she had learned to cry in boarding school when the walls were thin and you had a roommate. Then she dried her face and drained the bath and went back to bed. Meanwhile, Cassandra Whitmore, because she deserved a paragraph inside a chapter. On Wednesday afternoon, Margot had looked her up, carefully, through channels that left no digital trace. This was a skill Russell had taught her years ago and that she had never needed until now. Cassandra Whitmore, 29 years old, originally from Columbus, Ohio, marketing director at a mid-sized real estate development firm, not Derek's firm, an adjacent one. That was how they had met, presumably, an industry conference, shared professional circles. She had an Instagram, tasteful and aspirational. Travel photos, restaurant pictures, a close relationship with her mother and 2 younger sisters based on the tagged photographs. A master's degree in communications from Ohio State. She looked, in her photographs, like someone who was genuinely happy. This was the part Margot sat with. I wanted her to be stupid. I wanted her to be obvious. I wanted her to be the kind of woman you see in movies who is clearly wrong in every direction so you don't have to feel anything complicated. But she looks like a real person. She looks like someone who might not know she's the other woman. Or she knows and has convinced herself that what she has with Derek is different, real. Neither option makes me feel better. Both of them make me feel worse. She didn't hate Cassandra Whitmore. She hated Derek for creating a situation in which she had to think about Cassandra Whitmore at all. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. And I know the difference between a man who fell into something and a man who built something deliberately. Derek built this. He bought tickets. He made reservations. He sent tender texts about deserving the world. He chose every single day for 14 months to do this. That's not a mistake. That's a life, a parallel life he was living right next to mine. On Thursday evening, Derek was home for dinner. Actually home, present, making the particular effort he made when he felt vaguely guilty about something. She had cataloged this pattern over 3 years. He opened the wine without being asked. He asked a follow-up question about something she had mentioned days earlier. He put his phone face down on the table. Tonight he put his phone face down. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Really?" She looked at him across the dinner table. The candlelight, the wine, the pasta she had made, the performance of a Thursday evening. "Honestly," she said, "I feel like I'm standing at the edge of something. Like everything is about to change." He nodded seriously. "Third trimester jitters," he said. "Totally normal." She picked up her fork. "Yes," she said. "Something like that." Over dessert, casually, while refilling his water glass, he said, "Oh, I've got a client thing Saturday night. Big event. You won't want to come. It's all business stuff. You should have Patrice over. Do something comfortable." He did not look at her when he said it. He was so fluent in this particular lie that he didn't even know it was a performance anymore. She said, "Of course, have a good time." She smiled. He looked relieved. He doesn't even know what he's walking into. On Friday, she called her mother. Vivian Ellison listened to everything without interruption. When Margot finished, Vivian said simply, "I see." "That's all?" Margot said. "What would you like me to say?" "I don't know. Something." A pause. "Your father would be furious," Vivian said carefully, "but he would also tell you that anger is energy, and energy should be directed, not wasted." "I'm directing it," Margot said. "I know. That's why I'm not worried about you." A beat. "Are you coming Saturday? To the party?" "I'd like you there, Mom," Margot said. "Not to do anything, just I'd like to not be alone when it happens." The silence that followed was long and complicated, and full of a mother's particular love for her daughter. "Tell me what time," Vivian said finally, "and what to wear." Saturday morning, 8:17. Margot put on the black Givenchy. She stood in front of the mirror, 7 months pregnant, empire waist, hair pulled back. The dress fit perfectly. Patrice had excellent taste. She looked at herself for a long time. Then she picked up her phone and texted Russell, "We're ready." He texted back within 3 seconds. "Car is arranged. I'll be there." Then, because he had known her since she was 12 years old, "Your father would be very proud." She put the phone down. "Let's go," she said to her reflection, and to the baby, who was already knocking. The Rosewood Hotel rooftop was everything the text had promised. String lights arced between wrought iron posts in long, elegant curves. The city skyline sat beyond the perimeter at that particular magic hour, shade of amber and violet. The kind of light that makes everything look more expensive than it is, and sometimes more beautiful. White linen-covered circular tables arranged around a small, polished dance floor. 3 bartenders worked efficiently behind a temporary bar stocked with Krug and silver ice buckets. The scent of late summer jasmine came from planters arranged along the northern edge. There was a floral installation against the far wall. White and cream blooms and an architectural cascade that Margot, who had been procuring art for 15 years, clocked at approximately $18,000. Possibly more, depending on the florist. 50 guests in cocktail attire were already circulating when Margot arrived. She was not on the guest list. She didn't need to be. Russell, who had been a member of the Rosewoods private club since 2009 and whose name appeared on several key documents related to the building's ownership structure, had arranged access with a single phone call on Wednesday afternoon. Walk in like you belong here. You do belong here, in more ways than one. Don't look for him first. Don't look for her. Get a drink, stand at the edge, let him find you. She approached the bar. The bartender, young, attentive, looked at her and then at her stomach, and then back at her with the particular expression of someone recalibrating rapidly. Sparkling water, she said. Please. Without her asking, he put it in a champagne flute. It looked from a distance like she was celebrating. She found a spot near the northern perimeter. The skyline view was best there. She could see the entire rooftop without turning her head. She waited 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Then she saw Derek. He was standing near the floral installation, talking to Graham Whitfield, his business partner of 6 years. Graham was laughing at something Derek had said. Derek was in a suit she didn't recognize. New, expensive, not in their shared closet. He looked relaxed, in a way she hadn't seen in months. Lighter, the particular lightness of a man who has put down something heavy. The heavy thing, she understood, was her. There it is. That's the thing I've been trying not to see. He's not relieved to be away from work, stress, or pregnancy anxiety, or in any of the things he tells himself are making him distant. He's relieved to be away from me. I have become, in his mind, the obligation. She, whoever she is to him, is the reward. I am the weight, and she is the rest. I have been someone's burden without ever knowing it. She watched him for 2 minutes without moving. He had not seen her yet. Then Cassandra arrived. She came from the interior stairway, wearing a red dress that was genuinely beautiful. She was laughing at something the woman beside her was saying. The room did that thing rooms do when the person who is the reason for the gathering arrives. It oriented itself. Conversation shifted. People turned. Derek turned, and his face. Margot filed it away immediately. She would think about that expression for a long time afterward. It was not lust, exactly. It was closer to relief. The specific relief of a person who has been holding their breath and is finally allowed to exhale. He looked at Cassandra Whitmore, the way people look at something they have decided is worth whatever it costs. Cassandra was beautiful. Margot acknowledged this the way you acknowledge weather. It was simply a fact about the landscape. Derek crossed to her. He kissed her cheek. His hand went to the small of her back. Her hand went, without thinking, to her own stomach. 7 months. The baby kicked. One solid, definitive kick, as if to say, I'm here. We're here. Don't you forget that. She didn't forget. It was Graham Whitfield who saw her first. She watched the moment it registered on his face, confusion first, then recognition, then the dawning horror of a man who understands exactly what is about to happen and has no idea which direction to run. He excused himself from Derek with a word and a gesture and crossed toward her. Margot, he said. His voice had the tight quality of someone speaking carefully in a language they don't fully understand. I didn't know you'd be here. Hello, Graham, she said pleasantly. Beautiful event. Yes, it... He stopped, recalibrated. Margot, I think maybe... Is there somewhere I should be instead? She asked. He opened his mouth. He closed it. I'll take that as a no, she said. She took a sip of her sparkling water. Graham Whitfield retreated. 30 seconds later, she watched him lean toward Derek. He said something very quietly. She watched Derek's face as he listened, watched the shift happen, the calculation beginning behind his eyes. Derek turned, and he saw her. He went very still, the specific stillness of a man whose two lives have just occupied the same physical space. His brain was running calculations at speed. Was this a coincidence? Was this a catastrophe? How much did she know? When did she find out? He crossed toward her immediately. She gave him that. He didn't hesitate. She watched him compose his face as he walked. By the time he reached her, he had assembled something that looked like surprised delight. "Margot," he said, "what are you doing here?" She looked at him. "I was invited," she said. This is a hotel, Derek. Anyone can come to a hotel." She looked around the rooftop. The string lights, the jasmine, the $18,000 flowers. "This is lovely. Whose party is it?" His jaw tightened, just barely. She had learned to read the micro-expressions over 3 years. That particular tightening was the one that preceded a careful answer. "A colleague," he said. "It's a work thing. I told you." "You said a client event," she said pleasantly. "Right. What's the client's name?" Silence. She held it. She had learned that too, how to hold silence without filling it. "Derek," she said, and her voice didn't waver at all. "What is the client's name?" He said nothing. In that silence, in the 3 seconds that stretched between them, while the string lights glowed and the champagne poured and 50 people laughed 15 feet away, she had a crystalline moment of complete calm. She was not angry. She was not sad. She was, for perhaps the first time in 3 years, completely clear, like water that has finally settled. He grabbed her arm, gently but firmly. He steered her toward the elevator vestibule, away from the party. His face had dropped the performance. This was the real face, frightened, calculating, and underneath both of those things, something that looked almost like relief. The confrontation was finally here. "I can explain," he started. "I know," she said. "You don't need to." "Margot." "I found your phone," she said. "Tuesday morning. I read the texts." The vestibule was quiet. The elevator hummed behind its closed doors. The party sounded distant and muffled, like music from another room. "I know about Cassandra," she said. "I know it's been 14 months. I know you told her she deserved the world." She paused. She let that sit in the air. "Our daughter is 7 months along, Derek. You told her she deserved the world, while I was at home growing your child." Trotz. He had the grace, at least, to look like he had been struck. The color left his face in a way that had nothing to do with the lighting. "Margot, I'm sorry. It's complicated. It got... I know it got complicated," she said. "Everything gets complicated. That's not a reason. That's just a fact." "I love you," he said. "I do. This isn't..." "Don't," she said quietly. "Please don't do that." He stopped. "We're going to talk," she said. "Properly. Not here. Monday, my attorney will contact yours. Until then, I'm asking you not to come home tonight." He stared at her. "I'm going back to the party," she said. "To... Margot, why?" She looked at him, at the man she had married, at the tie she didn't recognize, and the suit she hadn't known about, and the expression on his face of a man who still didn't fully understand what he had had. "Because I'm not the one who should leave," she said, and she walked back to the rooftop. She got another glass of sparkling water from the bartender who had given her the champagne flute. She found a table near the edge with a good view of the city. She sat down. She was 7 months pregnant, and she was at her husband's mistress's birthday party, and she was calm in a way that frightened her slightly. because calm, in her experience, was what came right before everything changed. Here is what Margot did not tell anyone for a long time. She cried in the elevator on the way up, not in front of Derek, not in front of the guests or Graham or the bartender who had been kind about the champagne flute. In the elevator, alone, for the 43 seconds between the lobby and the rooftop, she pressed her back against the mirrored wall and she cried, completely and silently, the way she had learned in boarding school, where the walls were thin and you had a roommate and pride required engineering. Then the elevator opened and she stopped. She was very good at stopping. This was not always the virtue. Derek did not come back to the rooftop. She learned this from Graham, who approached her table approximately 20 minutes after she had returned to it. He came with the energy of a man diffusing something. He sat down across from her with a glass of whiskey he clearly needed. "Margot," he said. He had the air of someone who had rehearsed this conversation and was abandoning the rehearsal. "I want you to know, I didn't know about any of this for a long time. But eventually you did," she said. A pause followed. She watched him make the decision to be honest. "Yes," he admitted. "And you didn't tell me." "No." She looked at him. "Graham, I'm not angry with you. I understand the position. I just want you to know that I know." He nodded miserably. He looked like a man being managed, and knowing it, and being grateful for it anyway. "Is there anything—" he started. "No," she said. "Enjoy the party." He left. She sat alone at her table for the next 35 minutes. Vivian was coming. She had texted from the lobby. She waited with her sparkling water, and the jasmine smell, and the string lights, and the city spread out below her like something that didn't know what was happening up here. Cassandra noticed her. She didn't know this immediately. She learned it later. But while she sat at her table, Cassandra Whitmore, 29 years old, in a red dress, on her 30th birthday, was asking questions. She had noticed Derek's abrupt departure. She had noticed the pregnant woman at the corner table who had arrived alone and who Graham Whitfield had sat with for 8 minutes with the particular body language of someone confessing. She asked Graham. Graham, who was having the worst evening of his professional life, told her enough. Not everything, but enough. And Cassandra spent most of the rest of her birthday party looking like someone who had just understood that the story she'd been telling herself had a different ending than she thought. I don't know what to feel about that. There's a part of me, the part I'm not proud of, the part that wanted her to be stupid so I didn't have to feel anything complicated. That part is almost sorry for her. Almost. Not quite, but almost. Then Vivian arrived. Margot's mother appeared at the rooftop entrance at 9:15. This was approximately 40 minutes later than expected, which suggested she had stopped somewhere to change her shoes or have a restorative drink, or both. Both were equally possible. Vivian Ellison at 62 was the kind of woman who walked into rooms and didn't announce herself. She simply occupied them so thoroughly and quietly that you realized afterward she had been the center of gravity the whole time. She came directly to Margot's table. She sat. She looked at her daughter. "You okay?" "No," Margot said. It was the first time she had admitted it. Vivian put her hand over Margot's on the table. She didn't say anything. She didn't offer solutions or analysis, or the extremely well-developed opinion she clearly had about Derek Reeve and his fundamental character. She just sat there. She held her daughter's hand. She let the silence be what the silence was. Sometimes that is the only thing. Sometimes it is the only thing that works. They sat together for a long time. The party continued around them. Birthday toasts were made. The tasting menu arrived in careful courses. Someone put on music that was tasteful and too loud. The city lit up below them as the sky went fully dark. At 10:30, Margot said, "I want to go home." "Yes," Vivian said. "I want to go home, and I want to sleep, and I want to do this one day at a time." "Yes," Vivian said again. "That's exactly right." Margot drove herself home. She had waved off this car Russell arranged. She needed the 22 minutes alone. She needed the particular solitude of driving at night with the city going past and the radio on a station she'd never changed from the last time she'd really listened to music. She got home at 11. She could not go to the bedroom. She tried. She stood in the doorway and looked at Derek's side of the bed and walked away. She went to the nursery. It was the room she had spent the most care on. The walls were a soft white that had taken 4 samples to get exactly right. The crib was assembled and waiting. A small bookshelf held the first books she had chosen. The glider was in the corner by the window, where the morning light would come in at a good angle. She sat in the glider. She put her hands on her stomach. 3 in the morning. This is not how it was supposed to go. I had a picture of how this would go. Not a perfect picture. I'm not a person who expects perfect, but a picture of something true, something built, the 3 of us in this room, learning how to be a family. That picture is gone now, and I'm sitting here in the dark trying to figure out what picture comes next. I kept myself small for a long time, not because I didn't know who I was, but because I wanted to be chosen for myself. And the terrible irony is that I hid so much of myself trying to be chosen genuinely that the man who chose me chose a version of me that doesn't fully exist. He chose a woman who needed him. I never needed him. I wanted him. That's different. And he would have never loved me if he had known that. She was still. I don't regret it. I regret some of the choices, but not you. Never you. The baby moved. A long, slow movement, not the sharp kick from the rooftop. Something gentler, something that felt, in the darkness and the silence of the nursery, at 3 in the morning, like an answer, like company, like someone else saying, "I'm here. We're in this together." She stayed in the glider until the first pale line of dawn appeared in the window. Then she got up and made coffee and drank it while it was still warm. On Sunday morning, Derek texted from what she assumed was a hotel. "I need to talk to you. Please." She read it, set the phone down, picked it up again. She typed 4 words, "Monday," through our attorneys. Then she put the phone in the kitchen drawer and went to water her plants. She had 17 plants. She watered every single one. She counted them as she went. It took 40 minutes, and she counted them like a rosary, the way her grandmother had counted beads. Not for prayer, exactly, but for steadiness, for the particular rhythm of doing a simple thing carefully. Monday morning, 10 o'clock. Russell Hart called Derek's attorney, a man named Philip Crane, competent but not exceptional, and delivered, in the precise, unhurried tone of a man who had won every version of this conversation before, the following information: that Margot Reeve, née Ellison, was prepared to proceed with dissolution of the marriage, that the prenuptial agreement was airtight, that the marital estate was substantially smaller than Derek may have calculated, given that the majority of marital assets had been funded through discretionary draws from a separate property trust, that in the event of a contested divorce, documents would be filed that would make certain information about the Ellison family holdings a matter of public record. Philip Crane called back in 45 minutes. Derek had some questions. He asked, Russell told Margot over the phone, specifically about Ellison Holdings. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "I told him it was a private family trust and that he should probably have read the prenuptial agreement more carefully." Margot was quiet for a moment. How did he take it? His attorney said, and I'm quoting directly, "My client needs 24 hours. He can have 24 hours, Margot said. She hung up. She sat at her desk in the art room. Outside the window, the September light was different from August. Cooler, less insistent. The summer was loosening its hold. At 2:15 that afternoon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. She had a slight superstition about unanswered calls. It was irrational, and she had spent 31 years unable to logic herself out of it. She answered, "Margot?" The voice was careful, slightly hoarse, the quality of someone who had not been sleeping. This is Cassandra. Whitmore. I got your number from... It doesn't matter. I'm sorry, I can hang up." Margot did not say anything for a moment. She sat with the sound of Cassandra Whitmore's voice. "Don't hang up," she said finally. A pause. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry," Cassandra said. That's the only reason I'm calling. I know it probably doesn't help, but I wanted you to hear it from me." "Okay," Margot said. "He told me," Cassandra said, "that your marriage was over, that you two had agreed to separate and were just figuring out logistics. That was what he said from the beginning. That was the..." Her voice caught. "That's what I believed." Margot was quiet. "I know that sounds like the thing every woman in this situation says," Cassandra continued. Her voice tightened. "I know exactly how it sounds, but I want you to know that I would never, if I had known you were pregnant, if I'd known there was a baby." Her voice broke entirely. "I'm so sorry. I am so sorry." I believe her. I hate that I believe her, because it would be so much cleaner not to. But I can hear the difference between a performance and a reckoning. This is a reckoning. She's not calling to defend herself. She's calling because she has been up since Saturday night realizing that the man she thought loved her is the kind of man who would lie to her the same way he lied to me. We have both been deceived by the same person. That doesn't make us allies, but it makes us something. "Cassandra," Margot said carefully, "did he ever tell you about his financial situation? What he owns? What he makes?" A pause. "He talked about his deals, real estate projects. He mentioned once that his wife came from some family money, that it had helped them get the house." Margot absorbed this. "Did he mention the name? The family?" "No," Cassandra said. "He really didn't tell you." "Tell me what?" "Nothing," Margot said. "Just nothing important right now. Cassandra, thank you for calling. I mean that." "Is there anything I can do?" Cassandra asked. "Actually," Margot said slowly, "there might be." She called Patrice immediately afterward. She was sitting in her art room, in front of the Diebenkorn. The afternoon light hit the painting that him at angle that made the color sing. Her father had loved this painting. He had once stood in front of it for 20 minutes without speaking, which was the longest she had ever seen him be still. She told Patrice about the phone call. Patrice was silent for so long that Margot checked the screen to see if the call had dropped. "You're not going to do the thing where you forgive everyone and absorb all the damage, are you?" Patrice said finally. "No," Margot said. "I'm done absorbing." "Good. What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let Derek see exactly what he had," she said. "And I'm going to let the world see it too." She said it out loud, into the quiet of her art room, to no one in particular, just into the air. The way you sometimes have to say the true thing to make it real. Somewhere along the way, I made myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. I am done being small Tuesday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Derek came to the house. He had called first. He still had that much. He asked if he could come to talk. Not through attorneys, just them. She said yes because she needed him to understand the full picture. Not for cruelty, not for revenge, because she needed him to know what he had squandered, the full dimension of it. He arrived looking terrible. 2 nights in a hotel, whatever Cassandra had or hadn't said to him soon after Saturday, the phone call, with Russell's information, which had clearly rearranged his understanding of things in fundamental ways. He looked like a man who had been doing rapid calculations and didn't like where the math kept landing. He sat at the kitchen table. She sat across from him. He said, "Tell me what you need." That appeasement frequency, she had never heard it in his voice before. It told her he had already done the math. "I need you to understand something first," she said, "before we talk about what I need." "Okay?" She took a breath. "When we met," she said, "I was testing something. Whether someone could love me separate from where I came from. It matters to me. It has always mattered to me. My father left me in a position where I will never, in my lifetime, have to worry about money. I've never had to worry about money. And I spent my entire adult life wanting very badly to be loved by someone who didn't know that." Derek was very still. "You passed the test," she said quietly. "For a while. Margot." "I'm not finished," she said. He stopped. "You passed the test, and then you stopped seeing me. Not the money. Me, the person. I became furniture. And somewhere, in the process of becoming furniture, in my own life, you found someone who still looked at you like you were exceptional. And I understand that. I do. But what you did, specifically, throwing a party, a lavish, expensive party, while I was at home, 7 months pregnant, that is not a mistake. That is a choice. A choice you made every day for 14 months. He didn't try to defend it. The man who had deflected and minimized and told her she was overthinking for 3 years did not try to defend it. "I know," he said, very quietly. "Do you know whose building that rooftop is in?" she asked. He blinked. "The Rosewood, the hotel." "No," he said. She told him. She watched his face as she told him. This was the moment she had been building toward, quietly, all week. Not for cruelty, because she needed him to understand the full portrait. The complete picture of what he had assessed as ordinary and discarded as insufficient. His face went through stages that she didn't have words for. She watched him understand, in real time, that the woman he had treated as a minor character in his own story had been the author the whole time. "How much?" he started. "It doesn't matter," she said. "That's the thing. That's what I need you to hear. The number doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm a full person, a whole person, with a history and a family and a life that is real and large. And I have been living in the margins of my own life because I was afraid to be seen as anything other than just your wife. And I am so much more than your wife. I always was." He asked, at the end, if there was any way at all. She thought about it honestly. She gave it the 3 full seconds it deserved. "No," she said, "I don't think so." What surprised her was that she didn't feel sad when she said it. She just felt true. September arrived. Margot moved through it with the particular efficiency of a woman who has stopped spending energy on grief and redirected it entirely into construction, not destruction. She was finished with that. The destruction had happened in the elevator and the bathtub and the nursery at 3 in the morning. Now she was building. She was building her next life with the same attention she gave to acquiring art. Patient, clear-eyed, long view. The legal process, because the prenuptial agreement was clean and uncontested, moved faster than these things usually did. Derek's attorney came back within the 24-hour window with 3 counterproposals. Russell rejected each with the specific politeness that meant the conversation was over. In the end, Derek's entitlements from the marriage were his car, his personal effects, 2 joint accounts containing money he had contributed directly, and a lump sum that Margot's team characterized accurately as generous given his actual legal position. He signed. He didn't fight. She suspected, and Patrice confirmed because Patrice eventually knew everything, that Derek had spoken to Cassandra after their Tuesday conversation, and that Cassandra, having heard the name Ellison, had Googled it and had shown him what came up: the Forbes piece, the board announcements, the charitable foundation bearing her grandfather's name, the full portrait. She wondered what that felt like. She didn't dwell on it. This is not triumph. I want to be clear about that inside my own head. This is not what winning feels like, but winning would have been a marriage that worked. This is just landing. This is me, landing on my feet. And I know that not every woman in this situation lands on her feet. Some of them are genuinely lost. Some of them have nowhere to go and no Russell Hart in their corner and no trust fund and no Connecticut house. I think about those women a lot right now. I am not separate from them. I just have more cushion for the fall. That's not virtue. That's luck and inheritance. I try to remember the difference. Derek's things were removed on a Wednesday. He came with a moving company. She didn't watch from the window. She made tea and sat in the art room with her book and listened to the sounds of drawers opening and boxes being carried and the front door opening and closing until the sounds stopped. That night she reorganized her closet. 2 in the morning. 33 weeks pregnant and reorganizing her closet in the dark with a single lamp on. Derek's side was empty. She stood and looked at it for a moment, all that empty space. Then she began moving things, methodically, deliberately. She spread her clothes out into the full space. She moved every single item she owned, 1 hanger, to the right, then 2. Then she kept going until her side and his side were indistinguishable, until the whole closet was just hers, until there were no longer 2 sides of anything. She stood back and looked at it. She had been compressed into half of her own closet for 3 years. She spread back out into the full space like a plant moving toward light, like something returning to its natural size after being kept too small for too long. On a Thursday morning, Derek's mother called. Nora Reeve was 64 years old. She had spent 30 years being the kind of mother who saw her son clearly and loved him anyway. That was admirable. She occasionally deployed that love as a bludgeon. That was less admirable. Margot had been waiting for this call. She had made peace with it. Margot, Nora said. Her voice had the quality of a woman who had rehearsed this 3 times and was already abandoning the script. I want you to know that I know what he did. Okay, Margot said. I'm not calling to defend him. He doesn't deserve defense. Okay. I'm calling because... A pause. The particular pause of someone finding honest words. Because I love that baby. That baby is my grandchild, regardless of what Derek did. And I am asking you, woman to woman, to please let me be part of her life. Margot was quiet for a moment. Nora, she said finally, I was never going to keep her from you. That was never a question. A long pause. Really? Nora said. She is going to need all the people who love her, Margot said. I am not going to subtract from that list because of what her father did. Nora's voice, when she spoke again, carried something different in it. Something that wasn't the brace of a woman who had been expecting impact. He didn't deserve you, she said quietly. I know, Margot said. But he gave me her. So I can't be entirely sorry. Cassandra did something Margot hadn't asked her to do. In the second week of September, She submitted a voluntary statement to Derek's attorney. She attested to the timeline of the relationship as she had understood it. She included the specific representation Derek had made, that his marriage was over, that they were separating, that he was free. The statement was unprompted. It was not legally necessary. The prenup covered everything without it. But it was true, and something about it being in the record mattered. Why'd she do it? Patrice asked. Because she needed to not be complicit anymore, Margot said slowly. Even accidentally. She needed the truth to exist somewhere outside her own head. Do you feel bad for her? Margot considered this honestly. I feel adjacent to her, she said. Like we were in the same story and neither of us wrote it. I deserved better than this. Not because of where I come from, or what I have. Because of who I am. I deserved someone who wanted to see all of me. Every part. The big picture and the small one. The inheritance and the woman who exists completely separately from it. I'm going to raise my daughter to know that about herself before she has to learn it the hard way, before some person who should love her makes her feel like the whole thing has to be earned. Late September, 37 weeks. Dr. Caroline Merritt pressed the cold transducer to Margot's stomach and looked at the screen and said, "Any time now." Margot drove home from that appointment alone. She had people, Vivian, Patrice, Russell in his particular way. But she wanted this drive. The 22 minutes of just her and the radio and the city. She sat at a red light on Riverside and named what she was feeling. She had been trying to name it for weeks. She had thought it was anxiety. She had thought it was exhaustion. She had thought it was grief in a new form. It was relief. Not happiness yet. Not the full, clear thing, but relief. The kind that comes when something that was always going to break has finally broken, and the ground is still there. The ground was still there. She was standing on it. The light turned green. She went home. Eleanor Vivian Reeve was born on the 1st of October, 4:57 in the morning. After 14 hours of labor that Patrice described afterward as heroic and extremely loud, both of which were accurate. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and flowers. Vivian had brought roses from the house garden, wrapped in brown paper, and the night outside the window was that particular dark that comes just before dawn when the sky is making up its mind. Vivian was in the waiting room. She had been there since midnight. Russell Hart sent flowers, 3 dozen white peonies, because he had impeccable taste and had known Margot long enough to know her preferences. The card said only, "Welcome, Miss Eleanor. The board is going to love you." Derek was not there. This was Margot's choice. She had made it clearly, and without cruelty. When the labor began, she sent him a text. "I'm at St. Mary's. Baby is coming. I'll send pictures." He responded within seconds. "Please let me come." She said, "Not today. She'll know you. She'll have you in her life. But today is mine." He respected it. At 4:58, Dr. Caroline Merritt placed Eleanor on Margot's chest. 8 pounds, 1 ounce, dark hair, enormous wide eyes that seemed, impossibly, to already be taking inventory of the room, the light, the sounds, the person holding her. "Hi," Margot said. Eleanor looked at her. "I expected to feel many things in this moment. I expected love. But love is abstract until it lands, and when it lands, it's nothing like the word. I expected fear. I expected grief, maybe, for the version of this moment I had imagined. Derek in the chair, the three of us, the complete picture. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to feel complete. Like I have been, my whole life, moving toward this precise moment. Not the marriage, not the money, not the career, or the art, or the Connecticut house, or any of it. This, her. Right now. This is the thing I have been moving toward. She held her daughter for a long time. The room moved around them. Nurses came and went. Dr. Caroline Merritt checked readings and made notes and gave Margot the quiet professional smile of a woman who had done this thousands of times and still understood that for the person in the bed, this was the only time. At some point, Vivian came in. Vivian Ellison, who did not cry at parties or funerals or the reading of wills or her husband's memorial service, stood in the doorway of the hospital room and looked at her daughter, holding her granddaughter, and cried. Not the polite, contained version, the real kind. The kind that had been waiting for exactly the right moment. She looks like your father, Vivian said. I know, Margot said. He would have... I know, Margot said. They sat with that for a while. The weight of it, and the beauty of it, and the way those two things were exactly the same thing. 6 days after Eleanor was born, Margot was home. She was standing at the kitchen island. The morning light came through the window above the sink. The same window, the same angle, the same kitchen where she had stood 7 weeks ago with a glass of water she hadn't drunk, and a phone that wasn't hers, and a future that was dismantling itself quietly in her hands. She was making coffee with one hand. Eleanor was in the carrier, on her chest, too early, technically, according to the manual. Dr. Caroline Merritt had given a practical, unofficial blessing to this arrangement because Margot was clearly going to do it regardless of what the manual said. Eleanor was asleep. Her mouth was slightly open. Her small hands were curled near her chin. Margot thought about the last time she had stood here. The playlist called Cass, Summer. The text preview, the 4 words, you deserve the world. She looked down at Eleanor. We're going to be okay, she said quietly. We're going to be more than okay. We're going to be exactly what we're supposed to be. Eleanor slept. The coffee finished. The light came through the window. She checked her phone. Once, only once. There was a text from Patrice. How are you two doing? A missed call from Vivian. An email from Russell with a subject line, Q4 board notes, action items. She put the phone down. She poured her coffee. She drank it while it was still warm. This was, she realized, the first time in months she had done that. Drunk her coffee while it was warm. It seemed like a small thing. It was not a small thing. 1 month after Eleanor was born, the Forbes piece ran. Not about Margot specifically. She did not seek press, had never sought press. But there was a profile of Ellison Holdings in conjunction with a major philanthropic announcement. The Theo Ellison Foundation was endowing a women's entrepreneurship center at Whitmore College, Margot's alma mater. The piece was 6 pages. It included a photograph of Vivian and Margot and Eleanor being 3 weeks old and entirely uninvested in the proceedings, and it identified Margot as the controlling trustee of Ellison Holdings, daughter of the late Theodore Ellison, and the architect of the foundation's new strategic direction. She read the piece at her kitchen table. Eleanor was in the bassinet beside her. The morning light was good. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt represented. She felt seen, in print, by someone who had done their research. This is who she was. Not what she had, who she was. I have spent 3 years being Derek's wife. That was a real thing, a true thing, a thing I chose and believed in and grieved for. But I was always also this. I was always Theo's daughter, and Vivian's daughter, and Eleanor's mother, and a woman who has spent her whole life knowing exactly who she is, and occasionally letting other people convince her otherwise. I'm done with that part. I'm done with the convincing. Derek texted when the Forbes piece ran. She saw his name on her screen, and she took a breath and she opened it. I read the piece. I had no idea. I mean, I knew there was family money, but I had no idea. Margot, I'm sorry. I don't know if that covers it. I know it doesn't, but I'm sorry. She read it twice, then she typed, "Take care of yourself, Derek, and be good to her. She deserves a father she can count on." She sent it. She put the phone down. She picked up Eleanor. That was the end of that chapter. November. Eleanor was 6 weeks old and had opinions. This was the thing no one had fully prepared Margot for. The opinions. She had opinions about the angle of the light coming through the nursery window. She had opinions about the warmth of her bathwater and the specific song Margot hummed while pacing the kitchen at 2 in the morning, and the particular way the carrier strap hit her left cheek when Margot didn't angle it correctly. She was 6 weeks old, and she was already entirely herself. This was the most extraordinary thing Margot had ever witnessed. She had seen extraordinary things. She had acquired art that made people stop breathing. She had attended auctions where single pieces sold for more than most people would earn in 20 lifetimes. She had stood in rooms full of genius and beauty and the specific weight of human creation. None of it compared to watching her daughter discover that she had opinions. They were in the Connecticut house for Thanksgiving. Not the garden house. The main house. The one Margot had been avoiding since her father died, because it was too large and too full and too much his. She had decided, sometime in September, that it was time to re-enter it, not to renovate, not to convert into something unrecognizable, to live in, to fill with new versions of old things. Vivian was there. She had been there for 3 days already, reorganizing the kitchen in ways that were technically improvements and practically declarations. Patrice and her husband James were there with their 2 children, who had immediately and thoroughly explored every room in the main house, including 2 that had been closed for years. Patrice had apologized. Vivian had been delighted. Russell came for the meal and left before dessert, which was classic Russell. He had eaten 2 servings of everything and had held Eleanor for 11 minutes while engaged in what appeared to be a serious professional conversation with her, which was also classic Russell. Dr. Caroline Merritt had been invited and had declined and sent flowers. Good flowers, the kind that came in interesting vessels. Nora Reeve was there. This was Margot's choice. Deliberate and considered. She had thought about it carefully and arrived at the same answer every time. She watched Nora in the chair by the window, holding Eleanor, singing something soft and off-key that Margot didn't recognize. Some song from a long time ago. Derek's childhood, maybe? Eleanor's grandmother. She got to be that. Derek's behavior was Derek's accounting. Nora's love for this child was real, and it belonged to Eleanor, not to Margot's grievances. Margot had enough sense to know the difference. Patrice appeared at her elbow with a glass of wine she'd been nursing for 2 hours. "You know," Patrice said, "most people in your situation are still in the ugly crying phase at 6 weeks postpartum." "I did my ugly crying," Margot said. "I did it in an elevator and a bathtub and a nursery at 3 in the morning. Classic Ellison method. We're efficient." Patrice laughed. Then she asked the real question, the one she had been holding for a while. "Are you happy?" Margot looked at her. She gave the question what it deserved. She thought about it honestly, the way her father had taught her to think about important things. All the way through, without stopping at the comfortable answer. "I'm getting there," she said. "It's not a straight line. Some mornings, I make coffee, and I'm fine. Some mornings, I make coffee, and I miss what I thought we were going to be, the version I believed in." "That's allowed," Patrice said. "Yes," Margot said. "I know. I'm letting it be allowed." After dinner, when the children were asleep and James had taken on the dishes, with the cheerful competence of a man who had long ago made peace with being good at domestic tasks, and Vivian and Nora had achieved some improbable Thanksgiving détente over a second glass of a very good Burgundy, Margot took Eleanor and went to her father's study. It was the room she had avoided most. It still smelled like him, his books, the particular brand of pipe tobacco he had given up 20 years before he died, but which had never fully left the walls. The furniture polish she still bought the same brand of, because she could not bring herself to change it. She sat in his chair. She held Eleanor against her chest. She talked to him, not out loud, or almost not out loud, barely more than breath. The way you talk to people who are gone when you need them to hear something important. I found the wall, Dad. You always said there would be a wall. A moment where I'd have to choose between what's comfortable and what's true. I found it. I came through it. I still have the bruises, but I'm through it. Eleanor made a small sound. The particular sound she made when she was settling into sleep. The sound that meant she was here and safe and entirely unconcerned with the adult weight of things. I know what I kept from all of it. Not the grievances, not the anger. I don't want to carry that, not the could-have-beens. What I kept is this. I know now that I can be fully seen. That keeping myself small wasn't protection. It was just fear, with a reasonable explanation attached. I had a person who was supposed to see me choose not to. That is terrible. And it is also done. And what I know now, on the other side of it, is that I am the kind of person who lands. And I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure she knows she is too. Eleanor was fully asleep. Her weight on Margot's chest was warm and absolute. The particular weight of complete trust. That's the wisdom. That's the whole thing. The prison door was unlocked the whole time. I was just too busy keeping myself small to notice it was open. She wrote Cassandra a letter. She didn't mail it for a week. She wrote it and read it and put it in a drawer and took it out and realized it wasn't about absolution, hers or Cassandra's. She rewrote it as what it actually was, a recognition. Dear Cassandra, we were both in the dark about different things. You were in the dark about me. I was in the dark about him. I hope you find someone who tells you the complete truth from the beginning. I hope you find someone who celebrates you, genuinely, not secretly. You deserve that. So did I. We both do. She mailed it. She never heard back. She didn't need to. January. Eleanor was 3 months old. She had grown. She was recognizably a person now in a way she had not been at 3 weeks or even 6 weeks. She had a laugh. She had a look she gave people she didn't know, measured, appraising, entirely without hostility. That was so specifically Theo Ellison that Vivian cried the first time she saw it. Margot went back to work. Not full-time, part-time, selectively, with the particular freedom of someone who works because she loves it and not because she has to. She took on a small acquisition project, a private collection coming up for dispersal. Significant pieces, the kind of work she was good at. She met with the family's representative in a neutral office on a Tuesday morning in January. The office had good light and bad coffee and the faint smell of old paper that she associated with rooms that take their contents seriously. She walked them through her approach and her history and her instincts. She spoke with the full confidence of someone who had been doing this for 15 years and knew exactly how good she was at it. When the meeting was over, the representative stood and shook her hand. "You're very impressive," he said. "Thank you," Margot said. She meant it completely, not as performance, not as the careful, practiced modesty she had worn like a second skin for the better part of a decade. She meant it the way her father had meant things directly, without apology. "Thank you. Yes, I know." She got in her car. She called Patrice. "Got the acquisition," she said. "I am shocked at," Patrice said immediately. "Stunned. Completely. Don't be obnoxious. I am going to be obnoxious forever. This deserves full obnoxious treatment. Margot laughed. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't calculate its effect or modulate itself for the room. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and genuine and doesn't ask permission. She drove home. Eleanor was with Vivian, who was conducting what she described as a grandmother audit of all the books Margot had selected for the nursery. This meant there would be at least 6 new books on the shelf by the time Margot got home. All of them purchased from an independent bookstore in Greenwich because Vivian had principles and also because she had been trying to support that particular bookstore for 22 years, and she was not about to stop now. The January light came through the car windshield, different from August. Different from the overexposed gold of that morning, 7 months ago, when she had stood at the kitchen island with a glass of water she hadn't drunk and a life that was dismantling itself in the space of 11 minutes of reading. This light was cooler, more horizontal. The particular light of a season that knows exactly where it stands and makes no apologies for it. It didn't look overexposed. It looked, Margot thought, like exactly what it was. Light. Just light. Enough to see by. Enough to move forward. She parked in the driveway. She sat for a moment. Not the frozen sitting of August. Not the paralysis of a woman unable to go inside. Just a breath. A beat. The natural pause between one thing and the next. The moment before you open the door and walk into the life you have been building. She thought about the woman who had stood at the kitchen island 7 months ago. The woman in bare feet with a glass of water and a playlist and 4 words on a screen and a secret the size of a continent in her chest. She thought about what that woman had known and not known. She thought about what she knew now. I am the kind of person who lands. I always was. I just forgot for a while. I let someone else's limited vision of me become the ceiling of what I reached for. I am done with that ceiling. I am done with the small version. I am the full thing now. All of it. The money and the art and the trust and the loss and the grief and the daughter and the mother and the woman who drove 40 minutes to pick out pale green tiles because she knew exactly what color she wanted. I am all of it. And I am going in. She went in. She went in. The door closed behind her. Inside, she could already hear Vivian's voice from the nursery. Reading something aloud in that particular tone she used for books she approved of, which was the same tone she used for everything she approved of, which was slightly too serious and therefore entirely sincere. Eleanor was making the sound she made when she was listening. Margot set her keys on the hall table. She walked toward the voices. She walked toward her life. Eleanor Vivian Reeve grew up knowing she was loved. She grew up knowing her own name and what it meant. She grew up in a house with pale green tiles in the bathroom and a small Diebenkorn on the wall of the art room and a grandmother who read to her in a voice that took books seriously. She grew up knowing that her mother had once stood very still at a kitchen island and made a choice, and that the choice was her. The content in this story was carefully researched, constructed, and manually edited by our team, developed with intention, crafted with care, to bring you meaning, emotional truth, and a lesson worth carrying with you long after the story ends. Thank you for being here.